The Indian Miss World, and the Rage of Muslims of the World. This book continues the story of the Arab sugar daddy and the beautiful Indian girl, and also the story of the Indian child bride and the old Arab husband. They have been written in English and translated into Arabic by the author Dr. Ahmed. This story resonates with genuine love, strong resilience, and steadfast courage. I invite you to accompany me as I continue narrating the story of the rare, fabulous beauty of the Indian girl, Ifat Khan, and her extremely beautiful mother, Rehana Khan. Before we dive in the tapestry of the story, I would like to remind the reader this novel is narrated in 6 books. 1. The Arab Sugar Daddy and the Beautiful Indian Girl. 2. The Indian Child Bride and the Old Arab Husband. 3. The Indian Miss World and the Rage of Muslims of the World. 4. Christina and the Complete Jew. 5. The Tears of God, Jews, Blacks, and Muslim Women. And 6. The Hidden Life of the Prophet Muhammad. This is an intriguing epic story which exhibits resilience, love, and sacrifice. Book 3. From a Slum Girl to the Queen of the World Beauty. Copyright. All rights are reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author except by a reviewer, who may quote brief passages from a review for printing in a public newspaper, general magazine, school journal, or university article. All characters in this novel are fictional and any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, is merely coincidental. Chapter 31. Muslims are always locked in denial. Miss World speech has been televised all over the civilized and not so civilized world. Muslims all over the world bristled with varying degrees of rage and indifference. In London, Muslim protesters filled the streets of the cosmopolitan city demanding the arrest and prosecution of the blaspheming Miss World who attacked the sinless Prophet Muhammad and the Holy Quran. Muslim clerics conspired to rebut her tragic life story, claiming that Aisha, Muhammad's wife, had already attained puberty by the age of 9. When the Prophet consummated her marriage to him, she was, for all intended purposes, an adult girl and ready for sexual intercourse. This follows the Arab logic that the girl reaches puberty around that early age in the hot climates of the desert, as opposed to 12-year-old and older girls in the cooler climates of Europe. They fallaciously claimed a 6-year-old girl and 9-year-old girl at the time of the Prophet Muhammad in the 7th century, or the 21st century as big as a 25-year-old girl and a 30-year-old girl, respectively. In other words, a 10-year-old girl 1400 years ago was as big as a woman who is a 30-year-old today. If this is the case, why do they marry underage girls until today? They should not allow their girls to get married until they are 30 years and over. Some, not wishing to follow this unacceptable line of reasoning, simply announce that Aisha was already engaged to someone else before the Prophet married her, and that is ample proof that she had already reached the age of marriage. Many of those clerics are foolishly silent when confronted with the verse in the Quran at Surah Al-Talaq 65, verse 4, which specifically allows a Muslim man to marry and sleep with a prepubescent or underage girl. None of them could find a justifiable reason to explain away the verse. The verse speaks clearly, defining 3 types of divorced women. According to the renowned Quranic commentator Ibn Kathir, the verse explores these 3 types of Muslim women: 1. Those who have grown old and their menses ceased; 2. Prepubescent girls; and 3. Women who have their menses and are fertile. The first 2 types are only allowed to remarry if they observe a 3-month waiting period. The third type of woman has to wait for 3 months and 10 days before entering a new marriage contract following a divorce. The verse in question was a response of the Prophet Muhammad to a question posed by one of his companions concerning Surah Al-Baqarah 2, verse 228, which states that divorced women must observe a waiting period of 3 months and 10 days before remarrying. The waiting period is so that paternity of children, if any, can be determined. The question then put to the Prophet is basically, what about old women whose menses cease due to advanced age and those underage wives who have not yet reached the age of puberty? If these 2 types of women marry and their husbands have sexual intercourse with them and then divorce them, should we also have to wait 3 months and 10 days before we can remarry them to other men? The Quran records the Prophet's answer in Surah Al-Talaq 65, verse 4. The two types of women, who do not have menses due to being advanced in age or due to being underage, need not wait for 3 months and 10 days. They have only to wait 3 months before they get remarried. Let us see what some of the prominent interpreters of the Quran have said about this verse. 1. Ibn Abbas, and for such of your women as despair of menstruation, because of old age, if ye doubt about their waiting period, their period of waiting shall be 3 months, upon which another man asked, O Messenger of Allah, what about the waiting period of those who do not have menstruation because they are too young? Along with those who have it not, because of young age, their waiting period is 3 months. 2. Al-Wahidi, when the waiting period for divorced and widowed women was mentioned in Surat al-Baqarah, Ubay ibn Ka'b said, O Messenger of Allah, some women of Medina are saying, there are other women who have not been mentioned. He asked him, and who are they? He said, those who are too young, such that they have not started menstruating yet, those who are too old, whose menstruation has stopped, and those who are pregnant. And so, this verse, and for such of your women as despair of menstruation, was revealed. 3. Al-Tabari, the interpretation of the verse, and those of your women as having passed the age of monthly courses, for them the iddah, prescribed period, if you have doubt about their periods, is 3 months, and for those who have no courses, because they are still immature, their iddah, prescribed period, is 3 months likewise. He said, the same applies to the idea for girls who do not menstruate because they are too young if their husbands divorce them after consummating the marriage with them. 4. Aisha, the infamous child bride of the Prophet Muhammad. Narrated Aisha, I used to play with the dolls in the presence of the Prophet, and my girlfriends also used to play with me. When Allah's apostle used to enter, they used to hide, but the Prophet would call them to join and play with me. Sahih al-Bukhari, Book 8, Volume 73, Hadith number 151. This hadith is explained in Fateh al-Bari. Playing with the dolls and similar images is forbidden, but it was allowed for Aisha at that time, as she was a little girl, not yet reached the age of puberty. Fateh al-Bari, Volume 13, page 143. The Prophet wrote the marriage contract with Aisha while she was 6 years old and consummated his marriage with her while she was 9 years old, and she remained with him for 9 years, till his death. Sahih al-Bukhari, Book 62, Hadith number 89. Despite Islam allowing men to marry prepubescent girls, you will find some Muslim leaders in the West who continue to deny the fact, locked in denial and unable to see the faults of their faith to this very day. The London Muslims in the UK protested against Miss World speech, simply because any challenges, questioning, or doubt is not tolerated in Islam. It is a religion that requires blind faith from its followers against all intellect, understanding, and logic. To use the mind is senseless and thinking too much will get you killed. For these reasons, they demanded the arrest and prosecution of the new Miss World. Not surprisingly, the secular British government and the London Police Authority rejected their demands, and she is allowed to return to her country crowned queen and the newly declared Miss World. She is escorted from the hotel to the international airport under heavy security. Among all the beauty contestants, Miss World is the only one who has been sent home in a small business jet. Except for 2 hostesses and the pilot, there are no other passengers on board except her and her mother. Miss World's itinerary is not made public, and so the Mumbai police have no idea of her arrival. The Muslims in London, however, phoned their relatives and friends in Mumbai and informed them about the departure of Miss World, so it instantly became public knowledge. Thousands of angry Muslim protesters gathered at Mumbai International Airport waiting for the blasphemous Miss World to arrive so that they could stone her to death for her abominable blasphemies against their infallible Prophet and Holy Quran. Chapter 32. The most dangerous Muslim terrorist. The Mumbai police intercepted a phone conversation between India's enemy number 1, Dawood Ibrahim, and some of his notorious terrorist associates in the Baikula area. Dawood called for the assassination of Miss World and called in position snipers strategically placed at the Mumbai International Airport. He also mobilized teams to cordon out her residence at the bandstand in the most opulent area in Mumbai, in case the first attempt failed. Mumbai police knew that if Dawood Ibrahim wanted to kill the Prime Minister of India or the Police Commissioner of Mumbai, no one could stop him. Indians are more afraid of Dawood Ibrahim than they are of the devil and all his demons. Who is this Dawood Ibrahim? He is one of India's more accomplished terrorists. Muslim born and bred in Bombay, he is known to be a natural-born killer. His name can terrify the bravest of police personalities and high-ranking officials. He is responsible for thousands of political and business assassinations in Mumbai and all of India. He murdered an uncountable number of police officers. His reign was not curbed when he went into voluntary exile in Dubai. The Dubai authorities refused to extradite him since he has committed no crimes on Dubai soil despite evidence to the contrary. From his haven in the biggest city in the United Arab Emirates, Dawood Ibrahim runs many terrorist groups all over India. His main headquarters are situated in the cosmopolitan city of Mumbai. His terrorists specialized in extorting money from politicians, businessmen, film stars, etc. They make a phone call to a wealthy businessman or a film star or an actress and ask him or her to pay them some crores of rupees, or otherwise, they will kill them. Sometimes, they kidnap his son or daughter and ask him to pay, or they will kill him or her. In some cases, the wives of those rich citizens had been kidnapped, raped, and brutally killed because their husbands refused to pay the huge ransom money. Political candidates and influential citizens usually use Dawood's terrorists to get rid of their rivals. Mumbai police believe that if anyone's name is added to Dawood's killing hit list, even God will not be able to spare the life of that person. It is a given that if Dawood Ibrahim has already decided to murder someone, the Mumbai Police Authority will not interfere, and every police officer will stay away from the path of the terrorists of that ruthless man. Every single police officer knows exactly the price to pay if he comes between Dawood's terrorists and their intended victims. The moment the Mumbai police knew that Miss World's name had been added to the hit list, it was considered a closed case. Therefore, as soon as Mumbai police caught wind of the assassination order to kill the new Miss World, they considered her dead and gone. For them, it is just a matter of time, and the entire world shall soon know that Miss World has been assassinated on her arrival at Mumbai Chhatrapati Shivaji International Airport by Dawood Ibrahim's terrorists. Nevertheless, one new female police officer took the risk and informed the authorities at the Mumbai International Airport about the assassination plot. She is one of those brave women who felt proud to have another Miss World from India. Following the information, the Mumbai International Airport in the Andheri area decided to divert the British small private jet to the Mumbai domestic airport in the Santa Cruz area. The very same female police officer approached Miss World and her mother upon their arrival at the domestic airport and revealed to them the assassination plot of Dawood Ibrahim. The Muslim girl Aphrodite Khan has never heard of the name of Dawood Ibrahim before. But her Hindu mother Rani Krishna began to tremble involuntarily from the mere mention of his dreadful name. She knows that when Dawood Ibrahim's terrorists decide to kill someone, it is for sure to happen. Expecting to find trouble at their house in the Bandra area, she booked 2 rooms at a hotel near the domestic airport. After checking in, she left her daughter Aphrodite with some strict instructions to remain hidden in her room and to keep the door locked no matter what. The wise mother returned in less than an hour with 2 Islamic burqas. She asked her daughter to put on one as she had done one herself. She then checked out of the hotel, took her daughter, and left. In front of the hotel, she stopped a taxi and told the driver to take them to the Baroda city bus station. That day, around 1 million outrageous Muslim protesters gathered in front of the Mumbai International Airport waiting impatiently for Miss World to make an appearance so they could vent their wrath on her. Dawood Ibrahim has mobilized 15 gunmen as snipers throughout strategic vantage points at the international airport. Every one of his gunmen is a ruthless professional shooter not known to miss his target. The order to shoot and kill on sight Miss World has already been issued. No bullets were fired that day. Finally, the airport public system announced in the intercom and through the media that the British private jet ferrying the new Miss World had landed at the Mumbai military air base in the Juhu area. The authorities understood the volatility of the situation and hoped to defuse it by getting the large crowd to disperse. Long after Miss World had arrived at the domestic airport, many of the protesters suspected a ruse and continued to wait for the British plane of the blasphemous woman to land on Indian soil. Eventually, spying moles within the Mumbai Police Department confirmed the arrival of Miss World in a British private business jet at the domestic airport terminal and information about the brave female police officer who alerted the target to the assassination attempt. By the time the snipers arrived at the Santa Cruz domestic airport, their targets had long gone. They decided to regroup and beef up reconnaissance at the bandstand house of their two victims. At least she should die in the comfort of her own home. At the same time, the terrorists sent 20 of their number to deal with the female police officer who has dared to foil their flawless plot. It was the evening time when the courageous female officer completed her shift and returned to her neat apartment in the Goregaon area. New to the police force and a single, young Hindu girl, she expected her apartment to be empty since she lived alone. Entering the apartment unarmed, having surrendered her sidearm after her shift was over, she found Dawood Ibrahim's terrorists waiting for her, all armed with AK-47 Kalashnikovs. 3 of them dragged her out by her legs from the huge apartment complex. By the time they reached the main entrance, a huge crowd of onlookers had gathered in morbid fascination. The large circle around them became even bigger when the terrorists forced all the frightened residents of the apartment complex, at the threat of death, to assemble in the courtyard. None of them can dare to use his cell phone to call in the cops. When and only when the apartment complex has been vacated by its residents, the female officer has begun to understand what is in store for her. The terrorists began to strip off her clothes piece by piece, at which time all the fight has been beaten out of her. When the Muslim terrorists stripped her fully naked without leaving on her body even her bra and underwear, they began to rape her in full view of her friends and neighbors. The crowd felt pity for the naked female police officer, but none of the residents could do anything. After 6 men have raped her, they took turns shooting her in her hands and legs, leaving her flailing on the ground naked and bleeding copiously. By the time they left, she was barely conscious, and blood profusely running down the sidewalk in a brilliant cinnabar stream. Some of her female neighbors rushed to cover her with their dupattas and saris and give her some measure of dignity. The men made several emergency calls to the police to report the atrocity and arrange for medical aid. Around the same time, it is purported that a large cargo helicopter dropped a 1,000-pound bomb on the residence of the female film director Mrs. Rani Krishna in Bandra. Casualties are high, with 30 police officers and many domestic staff killed outright after their bodies were blown up in smithereens. Some of them are crushed by falling rubble on their bodies. The following morning, the city of Mumbai awoke to the breaking news that the Muslim Miss World Aphrodite Krishna Khan and her Hindu mother Rani Krishna had been assassinated by the ruthless terrorists of Dawood Ibrahim on the day of their homecoming. Shortly after, the autopsies conducted in the Nanavati Super Specialty Hospital on the victims evacuated from the blast site revealed that Miss World and her mother were not on the list of casualties. The Mumbai Police Authority has been forced to admit that Miss World and her entourage probably did not go home on the day of their return. Their investigations showed hotel bookings at the Intercontinental Hotel in Santa Cruz for just a few hours. There are no other leads to their location and no eyewitness reports have come in. The police could only guess that they were on the run somewhere in Mumbai. In the meantime, Dawood Ibrahim has become extremely furious. A mere young Hindu policewoman has foiled him not once, but twice. It is now becoming a matter of saving face and honor. He cannot afford his men to think of him as impotent. He called in another one of his Muslim terrorist leaders in the Kerala area and enlisted his help. As usual, his phone calls were tapped, and the Mumbai police came to know about this new development. As before, no action is taken by the police authority. This time there was no leak and everyone in the anti-terrorist department stayed clear of Dawood Ibrahim's way. When the first terrorist leader of Baikula fails to kill Miss World or discern her location, he knows he has to salvage the situation by giving his Lucifer boss overseas something to smile about. He dispatched 3 of his most reliable terrorists to the Mahatma Gandhi homeless children's shelter when the site was closed. It is the noble charity project Miss World is building to house some of the thousands of Mumbai orphaned and homeless street children. All of the construction crew went home after sunset. The terrorists worked at night in relative peace, planting the 5 batches of high explosives that they had brought along. The night security guards are old and succumbed easily to the threats of the terrorists to kill them and all of their family members. The aged guards have been instructed by those ruthless thugs to stay silent and not call the police, and to stay away from the site the next day. The site has a crew complement of 80 male workers and 90 female workers. The female laborers come in every morning with their babies strapped to their backs all day. They remain in a whole day's work and go to their huts in the slum of Dharavi in the evening. Apart from the skilled and unskilled labor force, there are also 25 builders and 5 civil engineers working on Aphrodite Khan's noble project. It does not help that Aphrodite provides 2 free meals to every worker, and many of them stay around during the lunch hour. When work is in full swing, Dawood Ibrahim's terrorists remotely detonated all 5 blast charges that had been installed on the previous night. Sitting in a small white Maruti car parked across the street, the Muslim terrorists look like they are playing a video game on a big screen TV. At 10:30 in the morning, 5 huge blasts culminated as one rocked the building to its foundation, leaving the ruthless Muslim terrorists with broad smiles on their faces. There were no less than 200 workers inside the building at the time of the explosion. The air is filled with arms, legs, heads, and feet. More than 40 suckling babies have been torn apart from their mothers' grasps. The recovery medical crew found assorted body parts all over the rubble of the building. Very few workers have survived the cowardly terrorist attack. Those survivors have suffered major trauma and become handicapped for life. The bodies of all the 240 victims have been blown to bits and pieces. Not a single body is found intact or identifiable. Consequently, the hospital staff and government workers have gathered those scattered human limbs and cremated them into ashes in the same spot. Not a single victim has been buried in another graveyard. The noble project of the winner of the 3 honorable titles of Miss Mumbai, Miss India, and Miss World Aphrodite Krishna Khan has been turned into a mass grave. Chapter 33. The Muslim Terrorist Plot Against Miss World. On the day of their arrival from London, the 2 frightened women Rani Krishna and Aphrodite Khan left the Intercontinental Hotel and fled to the Baroda bus station, cloaked in their black burqas. Rani avoided traveling by plane or train because she did not want to leave any clue for the Muslim terrorists of Dawood Ibrahim to lead them to their whereabouts. There is intensive security at the 2 airports, and they would have to show proof of identification and many points in the boarding process. Similarly, train tickets require a name attached to them, necessitating the surrender of their identity cards or Indian passports. In both places, a travel database of names, times, dates, and final destination locations would be updated. There are no such processes at the bus station. Tickets are dispensed and reservations are made without the need to view identification documents. Sometimes, the bus office may ask you for a first name and a family name, and whatever 2 names you give them they will add it to your ticket and write it in their booking register. Soon after they arrived at the Baroda bus office, the Hindu woman Rani Krishna booked bus tickets for 2 of them in the names of Nafisa Khan and Shabana Khan. The wise mother decided to take her adopted Muslim daughter to Baroda city. She planned to put up at her sister's house in the state of Gujarat. Her sister had a short acting stint in Bollywood but fell in love with an extraordinarily rich businessman from Baroda at a young age and married him. Lakshmi Patel, Rani Krishna's sister, decided to trade in her career in Bollywood for normal family life. After 10 years of blissful marriage, her husband passed away and she opted to remain single, raising their only son Rahul Patel. Lakshmi, like her sister Rani, is overly attached to India, despite her son's constant appeals that she join him in the United States of America. Now Lakshmi is wonderfully comfortable in her Indian homeland, running huge profitable businesses she inherited from her husband and playing the role of a big millionaire businesswoman. Rani Krishna planned to stay for some time with her sister. She wanted to know whether the information she received from the brave female Hindu police officer was reliable. She knows that taking her daughter to any hotel in Mumbai or any other city in India, for that matter, will mean detection by Dawood Ibrahim's network of informers and henchmen. When she arrived at her sister's home, the guards refused access to them. Lakshmi is shocked when one of her security guards tells her that a couple of burqa-clad Muslim women are standing in front of the gate of her mansion insisting on speaking with her. She told the guard to summon the police if they did not agree to disperse and immediately leave her sacred ground. When the guard told Rani of her sister's decision, she removed the black veil from her face and revealed her true identity. Lakshmi has been surprised to see her sister emerging from the black burqa. She assumed that her little sister had converted to Islam. This does not sit well with her because she happens to be one of those Hindu people who hate Muslims with bitterness. Her husband was killed at the hands of some Pakistani Muslim terrorists who stormed the Taj Mahal Hotel, randomly shooting at guests. This incident scared her for life, and from then on, she viewed them all with the greatest distrust. Looking at her sister in a burqa required all the self-control she could muster. For Lakshmi, the burqa is a sign of oppression and abuse of the woman. She believes that no rational woman should agree to be buried inside a living tomb or be covered by her burial clothes before her death. Rani saw the look in her eyes and spoke up immediately, explaining that the burqa was merely a disguise. That was done, she explained to her frightened sister the reason that led her and her daughter to dress up in such a fashion. Lakshmi has to appreciate her sister's resourcefulness and calm under pressure. She offered them a roof over their heads as long as they wished to stay. Further discussion brought up the bombing of Rani's residence and the incident surrounding the female police officer who was gang-raped and shot full of bullets in front of her apartment. The ruthlessness shown served to underline the cruelty of the Muslim terrorists. It is clear to Rani now that continuing to live in India posed an unacceptable risk for the two of them. Even her proud Indian sister advised her to leave India and settle somewhere far away. America is the best refuge for sure. Rani is extremely uncomfortable with the choices in front of her. She is not ready and willing to abandon her beloved motherland Hindustan. Even Aphrodite balked at the idea of fleeing in the face of threats. She is insistent that she wants to see the construction of her noble charity project building of the Mahatma Gandhi Homeless Children's Shelter completed. Miss World felt as if she had died alongside her noble project when she heard the horrific news of its destruction by the terrorists. She cried like a small female baby unable to be comforted. She wept the whole day and refused all food and drink for over 24 hours. It is the elder sister Lakshmi Patel who read in the newspapers about the destruction of Rani's residence in the Bandra area and Aphrodite's noble project at the Dharavi slum area. In the meantime, both Lakshmi and Rani become more and more convinced that their best option is to leave India as soon as possible. Both the bomb sites are ample proof that Dawood Ibrahim and his underworld network are utterly ruthless and doggedly determined, and a dangerous combination indeed. Staying in India, she may just become careless one day, and a half chance is all the terrorists need to get even. Not being able to make her upcoming movie of the slum girl, Ifat Khan, which decided to name it The Child Bride and the Old Man, somehow does not bother her as much as she thought it would. Her main concern is how to save the life of her beloved daughter Aphrodite. The dreadful Muslim terrorist leader Dawood Ibrahim deprived Rani and Aphrodite of their freedom and turned them into homeless Indian women as if they were female fugitives in their own country. If they opt to continue living in India, they have to live incognito for the rest of their lives, or at least for the rest of Dawood Ibrahim's natural life. Even so, they will both have to curtail all their activities and put all their dreams on hold. The media blitz around all their public activities has made them popular names and their faces instantly recognizable. That means living with a burqa. Rani is forced to accept that the USA will be the better route for both of them. When Aphrodite has recovered her composure after a day or so, Rani gently explains the dangerous situation they are in. She explained that they cannot be able to lead normal lives in India. But her daughter does not take the news well. She wants to stay in Mumbai and search for her biological Muslim mother Rehana Khan. After she came to know the honorable release of her mother from the Jeddah Women's Jail in London, she no longer hates her. It is the American female judge of the beauty pageant who assured her that her mother is innocent of the false charges of being a prostitute and thief, and she was rescued from imminent death through stoning and returned to Bombay. Aphrodite decided to find her Muslim mother as soon as she returned to Mumbai. But both her Aunt Lakshmi and Hindu mother Rani reminded her that staying in Mumbai under the current unfavorable conditions unfolding will be playing into Dawood Ibrahim's hands and making his job that much easier. When Aphrodite refused to change her stand, Lakshmi whispered to her sister and told her to pay lip promise to her adopted daughter and lie about her intent with the hope of bringing her back to India sometime shortly to find her Muslim mother. After convincing her daughter, Rani Krishna decided to make their escape out of India via New Delhi. Mumbai, of course, is no longer an option. Both sisters decided that rail travel was the best option. They arranged for a ladies' carriage and the bookings were made in Lakshmi's name and that of her girlfriend's daughter Radha Tagore. That day, Rani and Aphrodite assumed the role of a Muslim mother and her daughter and headed to the Baroda railway station to catch the train. Upon entering the train, they found their cabin already occupied by two Indian girls, who looked very much like Christian nuns. The female travelers are from the south of India and are also dressed discreetly, covering all except their faces. They speak no Hindi. Other than their mother tongue of Malayalam, they are also versed in English and German. Entering their four-seat cabin, mother and daughter interrupted their conversation in English. The moment the nuns noticed the two black burqa-clad ladies, they became defensive and one of them uttered a quick prayer in English, "O Lord Jesus, I pray that these two Muslim women are not terrorists sent to blow up this train and all of us innocent people on board. Help us all make it safely to our destinations, Amen." "Amen," said her frightened female companion. Abruptly, both of the nuns reverted to speaking Malayalam, shutting the two Muslim women out of their conversation. The educated woman Rani Krishna understood the prayer of the Malayali nun but did not react. She understood that the two nuns were afraid of them. Sitting down across from them, she smiled at them, and she also greeted them in Hindi. One of the two nuns waved her right hand and shook it thrice indicating that they do not speak Hindi. Rani repeated her greeting in English and explained that mother and daughter were en route to New Delhi because they were planning to immigrate to the United States of America. The two nuns felt uncomfortable when they realized that their two new traveling female companions were not as dumb as they had assumed. It is their experience that burqa-clad women tend to be illiterate and are not multilingual. After overcoming their unpleasant surprise, the two South Indian girls tentatively engaged their travel female mates in conversation. In their introduction, they introduced themselves as Annie and Nancy, both Malayali nuns on the way to the capital city of India. The body language of the two nuns somehow assured Rani that perhaps they could be trusted. She thought it over and decided she could request some help from the two nuns when they reached New Delhi. She decided to reveal their identities. She introduced her daughter as Aphrodite Krishna and herself as Rani Krishna. Then she asked the nuns for directions to the YWCA in New Delhi. She said that she preferred not to take her young daughter to a hotel, and preferred more secure accommodations. The moment she announced that her beautiful daughter had just been crowned the new Miss World in London City, the nuns smiled condescendingly and assumed that she had lost her mind or taken some drugs before she entered the train. As far as the two nuns are concerned, Rani's story is now bordering on the impossible. If Rani claimed the incredible by declaring that the present Miss World is from the desert of Saudi Arabia or Somalia, the two nuns might give it a thought but not for the ghost-like human being sitting in front of them. They looked at the formless black apparition in front of them, trying to make sense of Rani's incredible claim. It does not even have to be Miss World. If Rani had claimed that her daughter was the Queen of Beauty in Baroda or Miss Timbuktu, they would have written her off. It is to their luck that the two nuns have not laughed to death. Meanwhile, the new Queen Beauty Aphrodite Khan has remained silent all this time. She noted the quizzical looks on the nuns' faces when they were introduced. She understood that it was the discrepancy in the names that had caused their confusion. Both their names are not Muslim, but the mother is a Hindu, and her daughter is a Christian, so she cannot be Muslim and Miss World is out of the question. Since her explanations had been met with disbelief and incredulity, Rani decided to clear their doubts. She opened her daughter's clutch bag and showed them her crown of pure gold. Then she took out a huge album full of thousands of photos of her daughter depicting her competing with unbelievably lovely girls and winning the beauty crown. After that, she told her daughter to unveil her face and reveal herself to her fellow female travelers. When the reigning beauty queen of the world unveiled her face and smiled at her new two girlfriends, the look of disbelief is replaced by one of wonder. Never have they seen or imagined that one of God's female creations on earth to have such harmony and beautiful form. Her beauty is beyond description and too marvelous for words to describe. If someone had seen her and described her beauty to them, they would not have believed one of the daughters of Eve could be such a beautiful damsel as this burqa-clad girl has manifested herself in front of them if they have not seen her with their eyes. They have not only felt jealous of her incomparable beauty but deep in their hearts, they blamed their Lord for not giving them 1% of such rare beauty that he gave to a Muslim girl who neither worships him nor follows him as they do. But then Annie remembers the Bible saying the devil transforms himself into an angel of light, and Nancy recollects that she read in the book of Ezekiel that Satan is the most beautiful creation of God. Therefore, their envy, anger, and doubts about God vanished instantly. In fact, after completing grade 12, Annie and Nancy decided to become nuns because they knew that they might never find boys to marry them because of their not white complexion and their rather swarthy and less attractive faces. After their tongues had been sufficiently unglued, the two Malayali nuns showered Ronnie with hundreds of questions. Now that the two nuns have taken them into their confidence, the wise Indian woman Ronnie explained their urgent need for discreet accommodation. Their plight must have touched the two girls, who after hearing their sad story, begged them to stay in the Christian nuns' faith home during their short visit to New Delhi. Chapter 34. The Islamic terrorist attacks against innocent people. When his two terrorist groups failed to execute Miss World, much less locate her, Dawood Ibrahim increased the manpower of his search and destroy teams. Now he has recruited other 4 leaders and their many terrorists. He ordered each of the 6 teams' heads to leave no stone unturned in the search for the new Miss World, who dared to call the infallible Prophet Muhammad my foot, and she had threatened to spit on the Holy Quran. The 6 crime leaders and the hundreds of ruthless terrorists searched every hotel, every airport, every railway station, and every bus station in Mumbai. Even the other satellite towns of Maharashtra state such as Pune and Aurangabad did not escape the terrorists' meticulous scrutiny. A few of them went off as far as the tourist city of Goa. Even the informants, contacts, and associates have been put to task. The whole meticulous search finally got a lead when one particularly helpful police officer tipped off the Mumbai Mafia. He leaked information regarding Rani Krishna. Soon the terrorist leaders know all about Rani's sister in Baroda. The informer suspected that Miss World and her Hindu mother had fled out of Mumbai through a bus. They concluded that the Bollywood female director and her Muslim daughter are on the run and most probably hiding at the Rani sister's residence in Baroda city. At the very least, the sister is probably the first person who can know where the two women are hiding out. Needless to say, they capitalized on the one piece of information and the single clue they had. 11 of them immediately headed out to verify the lead. With any luck, they will find the Hindu mother and her Muslim daughter. With as much haste as humanly possible, they arrived in Baroda only to find out that the information was at least 3 days late. The 11 Muslim terrorists broke into Lakshmi's mansion at nightfall. The 2 German Shepherd dogs have already been neutralized. Her 3 security guards have been knifed, and the house is all theirs. They entered Lakshmi's bedroom while she was still asleep. When they woke her up, she blinked at the sight of a roomful of street thugs wielding big knives dripping with blood. It has not taken them long to tell her why they have come. At first, Lakshmi denied knowing where her sister and her niece were. When the terrorists began ripping out her fingernails with pliers, she admitted that the mother-daughter pair had already left after staying for 2 days, and are now probably en route to New Delhi. Continuing their persuasive methods, the terrorists now not only knew where the 2 women were headed but also where they were planning to stay in New Delhi and who with. Under torture, the frightened rich lady Lakshmi blurted out everything. She confessed how her sister is planning to flee India, where Rani and Aphrodite are planning to stay in the capital city, and how they intend to make their way to the United States of America. She also divulged her sister's private cell phone number. After being gang-raped by some of the men, they dispatched her to her maker with a sharp blade to the heart. On the way out, the terrorists, not wanting to waste their efforts, looted the house of jewelry and other valuables. They thoughtfully took Lakshmi's cell phone, hoping to use it as a tactical advantage. The following day, 3 of them returned to Mumbai to brief the other terrorist leaders. The other 8 wasted no time in making their way to New Delhi on the Rajdhani Express train. What the normal Indian trains cover in 24 to 36 hours, the fastest Indian train Rajdhani can do it in 12 hours. Dawood Ibrahim's Muslim terrorists are in a good mood. At this rate, now they will be able to make up for valuable lost time. The trail of their 2 female victims is no longer cold. It is now only a matter of time before they report the happy news to their boss Lucifer in Dubai. They will soon be the toast of the underworld, not to mention the adoration of the Muslim world. The Muslim terrorists arrived at Nizam al-Din station at 6 o'clock in the morning. From Old Delhi, the 8 terrorists took 2 taxis and told their drivers to take them to the YWCA in New Delhi. Their exuberant mood is soon going to evaporate. On their arrival at the Young Women Christian Association, they became furious when they were told that there were no Indian women by the names they mentioned. One of them puts a dagger to the female manager's throat, but she has nothing to tell them. She swore in the name of her Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, that she had never heard of Rani Krishna or Aphrodite Khan. The terrorists vetted the guest register, but the names they are looking for are not listed. Not entirely convinced, they searched every room and cited every girl in the face. As is their custom, every attractive female has been gang raped. Any girl with valuables has been robbed of them promptly. Rani Krishna had truly told her late sister that they were planning to put themselves up at the YWCA. Meeting the 2 Malayali nuns was the only thing that prevented them from falling into the hands of India's most dreaded terrorists. The 2 nuns might as well have been angels. Rani and Aphrodite accepted an invitation from Annie and Nancy to stay at their place. The nuns' faith home has 3 other female residents, an elderly nun and 2 fellow nuns. The mother and the 4 nuns, who are known as Christian sisters, begin their day on bended knees for 2 hours, praying for the members of their church. Their daily task is to venture into twos to the homes of their flock, and pray with them. Having gone through South Indian vernacular education, they also have the benefit of 12 years of English medium instruction. All 5 nuns were trained in Stuttgart, Germany, and hence they became multilingual and spoke Malayalam, English, and German fluently. The Hindu woman Rani Krishna related her story of how the Muslim girl Aphrodite Khan came to be her daughter. She has to explain how she is a Hindu, and her daughter is a Muslim. This unlikely union of a Hindu mother and a Muslim daughter was what puzzled the 2 nuns when they were on the train. The Hindu mother Rani decided to be discreet and not reveal all the reasons for their need for seclusion or the reason they had left Mumbai so abruptly and come to New Delhi. She wisely did not mention anything about their brief stay with her sister Lakshmi in Baroda. The 5 nuns have always lived in a cloistered environment, away from the secular world. Much of what happened in traditional India is of no interest to them. None of them has any idea who the current Miss India or Miss World is. Their lives centered upon their church and their flock. Every day, they spend 8 hours praying for the welfare of others. The commonly used phrase in their vocabulary is "Praise the Lord." Miss World and her mother are given a room in the nuns' home. They are not required to attend daily prayers or group meetings, which are convened 4 times a day. Immediately after settling in, the mother and daughter made their way to the American embassy to apply for immigration visas. The incredibly long queues greeting their arrival at the embassy served to change Rani's mind. Asking discreetly made her realize that the lines move imperceptibly, and one has to brave the blazing sun or the chill of tropical rains without even getting to the window to receive the official application forms. The backlog for visa applications has extended the approval period to more than a year. Rani also does not like the idea of standing out in the open, in full view of terrorists. Her casual inquiries have led her to believe that approaching the Canadian embassy is a better idea. When they reached the Canadian embassy, they found even more people and longer lines. The normal waiting period is even longer. It may take between 18 months to 2 years to reach this promised land of hopes and dreams. There have to be other options. The Australian embassy is just as crowded, and the New Zealand embassy seem to have the same people in lines. For 3 days, Rani and her daughter ran in circles in New Delhi, without going anywhere, and now, with no place to go. On their 4th day in the capital city of India, a casual conversation between Rani with a nice lady led to one of the travel agencies in town. It is impressed with their visa application under the auspices of a commercial enterprise. This can significantly shorten their waiting time. Rani and her daughter have approached an agency run by a Sikh man. The larger-than-normal sign above his place of business announced, "Reach the promised land in no time flat." After the preliminaries, they are now looking at a fee of 500,000 rupees each, 3,000 Canadian dollars for landing immigrant visas, and 800 Canadian dollars for processing. The astute Singh sensed that his prospective clients were in a big hurry to leave, so he sealed the deal by claiming that he shortened the processing time of their Canadian visas to just under 6 months. To do that, he has to submit their applications to a Canadian embassy in one of the European cities of London, Paris, or Berlin. He added that it must be their responsibility to obtain travel visas for their interviews in the city of their choice. Noting their agreeable looks, he quickly advised that incidental costs of air tickets, food, and accommodations, of course, be extra. Therefore, quirky the name, Ronnie thought, reach the promised land in no time flat, may just give them the air tickets they need to exit out of India. The plan began to take form in her head. They can just travel to a European city as wealthy Indian female tourists and lay low for 6 months over there. Instead of paying 1 million rupees to the Sikh men and waiting 6 long months in a hostile city in India, they may as well hop over to Europe and apply for their immigration visas by themselves. Ronnie and Aphrodite left the travel agency without paying a single rupee. From there, they took a taxi and headed to the German embassy. Fortunately, Germany is not a popular emigration destination for Indians, and they managed to fill in the requisite forms and apply for their visiting visas. Since both their Indian passports have already documented their travels to London, Paris, and Zurich, among others, their tourist visas are affixed to their passports without further ado that very same day. In addition, Ronnie revealing to the German ambassador that her beautiful daughter is the current reigning Miss World facilitated the process of their applications and hastened the release of their visas. Aphrodite Khan happened to be dressed up in one of those fancy Western dresses which made her appear to Mr. Ambassador as the most beautiful girl in the entire universe. So, he has no slight doubt about her mother's declaration. Their very next stop is the Air India office. By the time they paid and confirmed their first-class air tickets at 5:30 p.m., the mother and her daughter had less than 4 hours to take off, and 1 hour to check in. The Malayali nuns' faith home is at least 2 hours travel away, the time they do not have. They decided to call from the Indira Gandhi International Airport and thank the nuns for their love and kindness, ending the phone call with grateful goodbyes. By this time, the nuns now knew why they were in such a hurry to fly off to Berlin. Ronnie decided to call her sister in Baroda. She wants to say goodbye to her and tell her about her change in plans. She tried the house phone and cell phone number several times, but could not get through. Ronnie had not called her sister since leaving her house 5 days ago. Guilt ate at her, and she decided to ask a favor from the Malayali nuns. Annie agreed to call Lakshmi the following day and inform her of the latest developments regarding the travels of her sister and niece. Chapter 35. The Christian Nuns and the Muslim Terrorists. Whether it is a bad omen, good luck, a mere coincidence, or divine intervention, who is to say? Miss World and her Hindu mother have escaped the clutches of the most dreaded Muslim terrorist groups in the world. They arrived safely in Berlin, the capital of Germany. The same cannot be said for those innocent women they came into contact with. The innocent bystander toll of damage, destruction, death, and suffering, however, is incalculable. The first to fall is the brave young Hindu female police officer who was paraded barenaked and raped in public by 6 terrorists. It was the most painful and humiliating experience for a policewoman to go through in front of everybody. After gang raping her in broad daylight, her limbs were shot to pieces to render her handicapped for the rest of her miserable life. Indians prefer that a rape victim should kill herself rather than live with a defiled body, and no man would marry her. Sometimes, a brother might kill his raped sister, or a husband might burn the body of his defiled wife. This vile Indian custom punishes the rape victim for a crime she has not done. She would be raped by a stranger and get killed by a close relative for being a victim of rape. Next, the cowardly Muslim terrorist attack on Rani Krishna's residence in Bandra escalated the scale of violence. Innocent guards, servants, maidservants, and police officers lost their lives to a bomb dropped from a hijacked helicopter. It was stolen from a military base in the Juhu area. The destruction and mayhem continued into the 3rd day when around 240 male laborers and female workers and their babies were decimated by 5 explosive charges, turning a building into thousands of tons of rubble, and making a noble charity project into a mass grave. The Indian Muslim terrorists then systematically tortured, raped, and murdered Rani's sister, Lakshmi Patel. They also robbed every valuable item found in her huge mansion. The same fate befell many female guests of the New Delhi YWCA. Many innocent Christian girls in the women's center got gang raped and robbed of their money and gold. The last victims are the Good Samaritans, the Malayali nuns Annie and Nancy and their Christian sisters who had sheltered Miss World and her mother for 3 days. When the nun Annie used the Christian nun's home's telephone to call Lakshmi's cell phone to inform her about the urgent departure of her sister and niece, she set off a chain of events that are soon going to devastate her peaceful world. Since the Muslim terrorists had already acquired Lakshmi's cell phone, locating the nun's faith home is child's play. When Rani called her sister, the Muslim terrorists could not determine her location because she had used a public phone at the New Delhi International Airport. The battery in her cell phone and Aphrodite's cell phone had failed. They had left their chargers at the nun's residence. The call Idaho of the phone the nun Annie used revealed to the Islamic terrorists the address of the Christian nuns. So, the devil's ambassadors rushed to the place thinking they could find Miss World and murder her. When they cannot find their intended victim, the Malayali nuns have been brutally tortured to coax out of their mouths every last bit of information they know about the fugitive Miss World. The Islamic terrorists know only too well that the simple Christian nuns have only one thing of value. The most important and precious thing is keeping their vow of chastity and purity. To deny them even this virtue of celibacy, they are first molested, their bodies defiled, and then they are raped, and their virginities are violently robbed. After their violation, the Christian nuns have lost all will to live. The simple country Christian nuns take their chastity vows very seriously, preserving their purity, symbolizing their dedication of faith as brides of Christ and female ambassadors of good faith to their Lord on earth. All 4 Christian nuns have come from the dregs of poverty in South India. They owned nothing material, save their honor and their faith. When they got raped, they have nothing left because they have lost what they are trying to retain all their lives and preserve until their deaths. Each one of the Christian nuns wants to die one day and meet her Lord as his holy bride. But then after their bodies have been defiled and lost their virginity, what remains is little faith in their bleeding hearts if they could salvage it. For the 2 nuns, Annie and Nancy, their one supreme offering to God is now null and devoid. They might have preferred death than to live with impure and unholy bodies. Their leader, who is their Christian mother Tara, begged the Muslim terrorists to do anything to the 4 young Malayali nuns, but they should neither defile their holy bodies nor rape them. If the Muslim terrorists learned anything from their faith, it is the idea of leverage and terror. Their religion allows them to rape the women of the infidels. So, they exploited the one weakness of the Christian nuns until they were sure they got all the information they could. They refused to believe that Miss World and her mother had already left India and traveled to Germany. Rani's sister Lakshmi had confirmed that her sister and niece are on their way to New Delhi to apply for U.S. immigrant visas. The first Christian nun to be raped is Annie. She has to suffer the terror and the shame in front of her Christian mother Tara and fellow Christian sisters. She has to bear the brunt of 3 savage attacks. Nancy is next. When the brutal rape of the 2 nuns Annie and Nancy have not given the Muslim terrorists what they wanted, they decided to up their Christian mother Tara by threatening to kill the remaining 2 nuns Mary and Susan. With no information forthcoming, the 3rd nun Mary has been repeatedly stabbed in the chest until she is turned into a corpse. The other Christian nuns could not stand the brutal murder of their sister Mary, so they closed their eyes and surrendered their fate to the Lord. They could not even cry out since they were by now muffled and gagged. In their hearts, the raped 2 nuns Annie and Nancy felt the murdered nun Mary is a more blessed Christian sister than them because she died as a martyr and went to the Lord as a holy and undefiled virgin. After the rape of the 2 nuns and the murder of the 3rd nun, the Muslim terrorists have to admit that the nuns are simply of no more use to them. So, they spared the 4th Christian nun Susan and left. She is neither raped nor killed, nor a single finger in her holy body has been touched by the children of Lucifer, the devil. Later, the pastor and elders of the church, even some members of the congregation, did not deal with the trauma and simply attributed the horrors of the terrorist attack to what made sense to them. Given their simple religious understanding, the 2 Christian nuns Annie and Nancy have been raped and the 3rd nun Mary has been murdered by the Islamic terrorists because they were not living a righteous life, and that was why the Lord had allowed evils to befall them. The fourth Christian nun Susan was untouched by the devil's messengers because she must have been living a holy life that pleased their Lord, and so, she was spared by those Muslim terrorists. The old Mother Terra is counted very much as righteous and most holy because the children of the devil spared her their evil retribution too. Unfair as it is, the two raped nuns Annie and Nancy are asked by the church leadership to step down from the upper faith home and live in the lower faith home among the lay believers because they are no more holy virgin nuns, and their spiritual lives are not a good example for the other Christian brethren to imitate them, as spiritual guidelines in the Christian faith.